Here's a story about my attempt to photograph a crawler. Be me. Live in a small town in a northern part of the US. Around December of 2022, there had been crawler sightings in town. It got to the point where some people were seeing 2 or 3 at a time every few nights. Don't believe the sightings at first, until one night, I am driving back from my shitty wagey job. Spot 1, walking along the road into the forest. It walked, like both feet were nailed to a plank of wood. It was also gaunt, with long spindly limbs. The thing was naked and half white / gray skin. It didn't get a good look at its face. I doubt it was a homeless person or a drug addict, due to how cold it was that night. Decide to try and get a photograph. Come onto X and ask for tips on cryptid photography. Get some good pointers about getting good camouflage and equipment. Best tip was to ask local hunters for advice. There are a few people who hunt for fun in my town, but most of them go to hunting preserves outside of the town. There are 2 dudes who know how to hunt and have a good understanding of the area. I'll call them Martin and Jake. Martin is 30-ish, kinda shifty and quiet. He moved to the area back in 2016 after getting in trouble with some of the law enforcement down south. He now spends most of his days walking around aimlessly around the town when not drunk in his RV. Jake is 63 years old and has lived in the town since before most of the roads were properly paved. His father used to take him hunting in the woods when he was a child. Both men know a lot about the area and agreed to help me get a few photos. They tell me they want to wait for the storms to subside and the snow to melt a little. Decide that February 28th would be a nice date to shoot for us. Agree, and during the time, they teach me useful stuff like how to avoid detection by fox walking and making camo out of dead foliage. Slowly, sightings of the crawlers dwindle, and by late January, there was only a few sightings every 2 weeks. Weather was pretty bad, so we moved the trip to the 1st of March. Day of the trip comes around. We head into the woods. Jake has his father's old Garand. Martin has an old beat-up Winchester shotgun. We hike in the woods, and for the first few hours, swapping stories and chatting about life. Nothing too bad happened that first night. In the morning, we stumble across something odd. It was a wolf, or what was left of it. It stunk like high heaven, and its head and stomach were the only parts left. The rest of the day, we were more alert. No more fun stories after that. Martin wants to head back. It was pretty cold too, and the previous night had been pretty bad. We decide to cut the trip short by 2 days and just spend one more day out. Jake says we should head to one of the creeks where a few animals usually congregate around. While we're walking to the creek, the smell returns, and it's downright nauseating. Martin starts getting vocal about wanting to head back. Jake also is starting to show concern. At this point, I felt maybe dicking around in crawler territory in wintertime wasn't the best of ideas. We decide that maybe it would just be best to head back to town and come back in the summer. On the way back, Jake says he knows a shortcut to where the van is. He says that there is an old stone path that leads us to the van. We follow, but something starts to feel off. My vision seems to feel off. The best way I can describe it is when an old camera struggles to catch up with rapid movement and everything is glitched. Martin starts saying something about his feet burning. Jake is basically dead quiet the whole time. Sun is starting to head down, and we are nowhere near the van. Ask Jake if we can sit down and tell him how my vision seems fucked. Jake doesn't respond. He just keeps walking forward. I ask if he's alright. No response. Martin asks Jake if something is wrong. No response. My head feels like it's on fire at this point, and I just sit because I just want the pain to stop. Martin starts yelling at Jake, but Jake just keeps moving forward. Finally, Martin shoves Jake to the ground. Jake asks what happened. He says he doesn't know what's going on. My headache was starting to subside a little, but the sun was finally dipping below the horizon. Jake asks where we are. Martin asks Jake what he remembers. He says he remembered us heading to the creek, and then everything after that was blank. We don't know what to do, and we start to panic. The sun goes down, and it's pitch black. This was the first time I realized how dark the night is, without any streetlights or cars. It was like staring at a wall. Could only see like 3 feet in front of me. It was also so cold that it felt like needles were being shoved into my face. Fumble through my bag and pull out a flashlight. While searching for a flashlight, I hear Martin try his best to bring Jake up to speed. I find it, and before I can say anything, Martin goes quiet. Jake goes quiet too. For 10 seconds, it's completely quiet. No animals. No wind. Not even the sound of snow being crunched by footsteps. The smell hits my nose, and it completely overtakes my nose. I start to cough, and then look at Jake and Martin. They are pointing at something. Look to where they're pointing at, and see something white pass cut through a tree. Martin screams, and points his Winchester at something. Jake starts to back away from Martin, and towards me. Point the flashlight in the general direction of where Martin is pointing his gun. It's a crawler. Martin tries to fire his gun, but nothing happens. He tries again, and this time, something does happen. The fucking gun explodes. Birdshot flies everywhere, and Martin falls to the ground. Ears are ringing. Everyone is screaming. Catch a glimpse at the thing. It's taller than any man I've ever seen. His skin is gaunt and colorless. Limbs are spindly, way too weak to support this thing. Face is almost featureless. Almost. I say almost because the eyes are the main feature. Black, like a shark or a dog's eyes. Stare into them, and I am met with the worst feelings. It was like my mind went blank, and every thought was instantly repeated with pure, negative energy. It was like staring into eternity. It was one of the worst feelings, and I am struggling to put it into words of what it was like. Loud bang fills the air. Jake starts firing his rifle and tells me to drag Martin. Martin is on the ground, writhing in agony, cursing and screaming about everything and everyone. Birdshot and bits of metal are embedded in his face, hands, and arms. Help him get onto his feet as I hear a ping. The thing is gone now, and it's just us. The wind starts picking up again. We drag Martin for about 40 minutes, trying to reach a road. We are lucky enough to stumble upon a road, and a car picks us up. Martin had to get a few bandages and stitches. It's been a few days since the incident, and Martin got discharged from the hospital a few days ago. Paid for his hospital bills and tried to talk to him. We talked for only a few minutes about what we saw. The last thing he told me was that he was taking his RV and heading to the southwest. He left 2 days ago. Jake, on the other hand, plans on seeing his family in Florida in a few days. He gets uncomfortable every time I ask about what happened that night. And that's the story of how I saw a crawler and vowed to go never looking for a cryptid.